Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Browns did it. The Browns came on the clock at 2. They traded out. Then they came up on 5, and they proceed to take a player that caused every Browns fan to start looking around and say, what the elf was that?
You're listening to the What the Elf Was That podcast, an iconoclastic look at the latest Cleveland Browns news. The What the Elf Was That podcast is part of the Fanatical Elves podcast network, a part of the Fans First Sports Network. Here's your host, Joel Cade.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to What the Elf Was That? I am your host, Joel Cade, a.k.a. The Left Guard. You can get me on X at The Left Guard, or you can email me at theleftguard@gmail.com. Okay, so those of you Browns fans who watched the first round are probably like, yes, I need Joel to explain to me what is going on here. Like I said in yesterday's podcast, the NFL draft is a poker game. And everyone has different hands. Everyone has different expectations. The expectations for the Browns were that they were going to go offense, and attempt to fix the offense so they could score points in a league that is primarily points and offense driven. But apparently the Browns had different ideas. So they traded out, and we'll get to the details of the trade later. They traded out from 2 to 5. And I think that trade says a lot about what the Browns are doing in the draft. But then they took a guy named Mason Graham. And I think all of us sat there and were just like, what in the world are we doing? We could have had Travis Hunter. Didn't do that. Could have had Ashton Jeanty, who's who I wanted. If you're going to go back, go at least take the best running back. Do something with your offense. Then they take Mason Graham. And then my son could tell I was pretty upset. So my 26-year-old son looked at me and it's like, Dad, it's not the kid's fault. And I guess I would impress that upon all of you who are frustrated with the Mason Graham pick. It's not his fault. This is a good kid. He plays tremendous football. Okay. We run him through the ringer of the questions. You're going to like it. Right. But he's just not what you were hyped up to be. And I think part of that is the Browns' fault. I think they're playing poker. I think they're trying to pump up Abdul Carter in an attempt to get the Titans to trade out. And I think they're pumping up, I think it was named Travis Hunter in an attempt to get somebody to trade up with them, which they did. They successfully baited the Jacksonville Jaguars, who give up a ridiculous amount of stuff to come up and get Travis Hunter, who was the Shohei Ohtani of football, which, come on, that's hype, man. That's hype. So let's start at the basic ground level. Who is Mason Graham? Nobody expected the Browns to take a defensive tackle, particularly in a class loaded with defensive tackles. Why would you sit there and take one at pick 5? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I have no idea why Mason Graham was not considered an elite prospect in this draft. And it has to be from his arm length, which isn't the greatest, and some of his athletic grades, which aren't the greatest. But if you want to talk about a football player, this man is a football player. So let's run him through our questions. If you listen to yesterday's podcast, can he return kicks? No, Mason Graham does not return kicks. That's not what he does. So the Browns still need to address the kick returner situation. And I'm going to press this until they actually find somebody who can return kicks instead of standing there fair catching. 2, can he play football? Mason Graham is the definition of someone who can play football. Mason Graham can play football. The knock on Mason Graham is that his athletic score, like his arm length, jumping, bench press, all that stuff, isn't maybe the greatest. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's that guy who understands what's going on with football. So I decided today, just for fun, to watch some film on Mason Graham. And I'm going to give you a quick kind of overview just so that you can get excited about Mason Graham, because I'm watching Mason Graham and I'm jacked through the roof. Like, this is a tremendous pick, and it's going to put to end this defensive tackle roller coaster the Browns have been going through. So let's take the bigger picture first. The Browns defense is a good defense. They have one massive hole, and that is defensive tackle. Particularly the one technique is a disaster. Mike Hall comes in, I think he was drafted last year, had a suspension, had some recovery from a knee surgery, I believe it was. He is a good 3 technique. Great first step, athletic, fast, can put a good pass rush move on. He's a great 3 technique. What the Browns have not had and have tried for, I want to say, over a decade to get is a strong defensive interior that can take on double teams and eat blocks. And that is exactly what Mason Graham is. Furthermore, when Kevin Stefanski, and we'll get to this a little bit, says that he's a perfect fit for their defense, that is 100% accurate from the way I look at it. Mason Graham fits this defensive interior in perfectly. So let's go over quickly what Mason Graham does in relationship to the Browns scheme. Jim Schwartz runs an old school double gap 4-3 defense where the ends line up in 4-point stances, take on offensive tackles, and read keys and make plays. The defensive interior pretty much does the same thing. They take on blockers, double gap schemes, read keys, and disrupts. Mason Graham is possibly the best person I've seen do this in like maybe 5 or 6 years that I've been watching defensive line prospects. It's amazing. You can tell he's been a wrestler. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. So Mason Graham's strength. He is very, very good against the run. Okay. He lines up, he takes on an offensive lineman, reads his keys, gets to where he needs to be, and begins to disrupt the play. If you can have an one technique that can do that, you're in gold money land. All right. He is excellent against zone blocks. He has great lateral movement. He can stand up an offensive lineman, feel the pressure, run laterally, get into the gap that he needs to be into to stop the play. He stands up on double teams at the point of attack. So what'll happen in the interior offensive line, and here you have a guard talking to you about interior offensive and defensive line play. This is my wheelhouse right here. You will get 2-on-1 blocks, particularly on a 1 technique. That's usually your biggest, fattest dude on the field, or it's a very, very, very fast dude that requires 2 people to block. So oftentimes in the middle, you'll have a center and a guard double teaming a defensive tackle, generally the 1 technique. The idea is to get movement either left or right, depending on what's going on. But that 1 block secures the play. So if I, as a guard, can line up beside my center and we can take on a 1 technique, we can move him a little bit or even prevent him from running across the guard's face to get into the play side gap. You're going to have positive yards, period. If you can double team the 1, you're going to get it. Now, 1 technique is the guy who lines up in the gap or on the shoulder of the center toward the, I don't know, depends on how you do it, but lines up on a shoulder center on one side or the other. The center of a shoulder, one side or the other. And usually that person gets double teamed with a guard because it's hard for a center to snap the ball and take on a 1 technique. Yeah, the position is there to disrupt and force double teams. All right. Mason Graham does this perfectly. When he gets double teamed, he's able to stand that double team up and hold his ground. And that is kind of like the expected. If you can just hold your ground on a double team, the rest of the defenders should be able to come in and make the play. But he does an excellent job of not only getting that double team, neutralizing the double team, he splits them and he gets off those blocks and will make plays. He is very, very good at it. And the way he achieves this goes back to, and I mentioned this earlier, the wrestling background. Mason Graham plays with excellent leverage. He plays low to the line of scrimmage. He uses basic human physiology to create power and pressure and stability. If anybody who takes Kung Fu will know exactly what I'm talking about. You have a strong base, you generate power and force and thrust. In this way, Kung Fu is much like line play in football. You're trying to generate power by being your feet planted on the ground and pushing off the ground and generating force. Mason Graham does this to a tremendous level. And it comes from his wrestling background of not being taken down, understanding his own leverage, understanding the leverage of the offensive lineman or 2 against opposing him, and understanding where their leverage is bad and using that to exploit their block. So Mason Graham will force offensive linemen to play with good technique. And that's the key for Mason Graham, because there's not a lot of good offensive linemen with good technique in the NFL. And I've gone off on this in podcasts in the past. Offensive line is one of those positions. It's hit or miss. and we don't need to get into that now, but it's the style of college football that doesn't require offensive linemen to be good, technically sound offensive linemen. And Mason Graham is just eating these people for lunch. So Mason Graham has great hands at the point of attack. He'll get his hands on. He's not the strongest guy, but he gets enough separation that allows him to figure out what's happening and separate. He always wins his one-on-one blocks. I have never seen this guy blocked one-on-one. He has to be double teamed. He is that good right there at the one technique. He plays 3. I don't think 3 is his forte. I think Mike Hall will be a better 3 for the Browns, but Mason Graham will be a tremendous 1 technique. He forces you to double team him. If any team wants to line up a center one-on-one against Graham, Graham's going to eat him alive. If any team wants to line up a guard one-on-one against Graham, Graham is going to eat him alive. His technique is that good. His balance is that good. His base is that good. His ability to use power is that good. One thing I saw about watching Mason Graham's tape, and I thought it was fascinating, is that he will stand up and call out the blocking scheme. Now, this is Michigan we're talking about, so he could be getting it from the sideline and being like, hey, I know what's coming. But you can, as a defensive lineman, if you're paying attention to where people line up, where their feet are, the splits, and you learn tendencies, you can pretty much guarantee I'm lining up. Oh, they're lined up this way. This is what they're running. I mean, I could do this in college. I could do this in high school. Okay. So, someone like Mason Graham can make this happen. So as a run blocker or as a run defender, you're not finding a better guy in this draft who can stop the run. And the Browns get run up the middle on all the time. This has been going on for the last 3 years. They've brought in free agent after free agent after free agent to solidify the defensive tackle position. That position, in my opinion, is solidified in Mason Graham, provided he can continue to get stronger so that he can stand up to basically grown men in the NFL with grown man strength. So it may take him half a season, maybe a season to get there, but he is going to be probably the real Robin to Myles Garrett's Batman. I mean, I would say Mason Graham could be Batman in the middle, maybe Batman 2.0, but he's that good against the run. Against the pass, he's got some work to do. Now, what his strength is, as I've mentioned, is his leverage, his power, his ability to read blocks. His ability to put on pass moves is not as refined as his ability to run lateral and stop the run. His primary mode of pass rushing is the power of the bull rush. You get 2 hands on and just run backward. Now, this is great for a 1 technique. If you can grab 2 people and push them back or even hold them steady, you're going to be okay as a pass rusher because you have other people rushing the passer. Your job becomes not letting the quarterback escape up the middle. Okay, that's what that is. Now, if he's in a one-on-one pass rush situation, he still likes to use that bull rush, which is grab and run backward. He doesn't like to rip or swim a whole lot, and when he does, he's okay at it, but he's not elite at it. The Michigan did move him all over the defensive line. He's played stand-up outside edge. He's played defensive end edge. In all those places, he attacks linemen, reads blocks, sheds blocks, and becomes disruptive. This is, in my opinion, a tremendous pick for the Cleveland Browns. It solves a problem for them they've had for years that nobody's wanting in the media or fans want to address because they don't really see how cool it is because it's not the sexy thing. It's not the quarterback. It's not the wide receiver. It's not the running back. It's the thing that you need to win football games. You need someone to line up and do the dirty work, and that's exactly what Mason Graham does. Now, one thing interesting about Mason Graham, we talked about, can he play football versus is he like some kind of athletic guy? Mason Graham is not the athletic guy, but he is a football player, and he plays football tremendously. These are exactly the kind of guys that I have been screaming, what the elf is that about, that the Browns need to take. People who can play football. I don't care if it's athleticism or if it's bench press or whatever, but if you can put the tape on and watch him destroy people and eat them for lunch, those are the players you need, and the Browns got themselves one with the number 5 pick in last night's draft. So it's not the kid's fault. He's a tremendous football player. He's going to solidify that defense, and that becomes an important discussion we'll have later when it comes to what are the Browns going to do in round 2. But this sets them up for something in round 2 that I think will be very, very interesting if you are looking at the game in a slightly different way than the rest of the NFL is. And I'm going to cue you in on that. For right now, though, we're going to take our break. And the exciting second half is going to be probably another good amount of time. But let's take our break now. And on the other side, we're going to jump on what are analysts saying about Mason Graham. All right. See you in a few. All right, and we're back. You're listening to What the Elf Is That? I am Joel Cade, a.k.a. the left guard. My expertise is defensive line, offensive line. I love to scout those things. And so for the Browns to take a defensive lineman, I'm on cloud 9. Initially, I hated the pick, but it's not the kid's fault. But he is a tremendous, tremendous talent. So what is the league saying about Mason Graham? Kevin Stefanski was asked about Mason Graham right after the pick. And what he said was, I just lost my quote. Here it is. Stefanski's called him the perfect fit for the Jim Schwartz defense, and I think he's absolutely right. Mason Graham does exactly what Jim Schwartz wants to do on defense. That Michigan defense up there run by the former Ravens guy, former Ravens DC up there. I can't think of his name. This will get me because my chiropractor knows this guy personally. So they were at Baltimore. They always ran that double gap scheme with their interior. Mason Graham runs that double gap scheme with their interior. The Browns do the same thing, and he fits what they do perfectly. This is going to be a plug and play player. Kevin Stefanski is right. All right, NFL.com ranks the Browns pick of Mason Graham as the best overall value pick of the night. Period. The Browns, if you get into this draft value picks, which you know I don't, I'm important on position value versus draft value. But if you're into this draft value thing, the Browns got the best value for their pick of any team in the draft last night, picking Mason Graham at 5. Now, again, question, can he play football? The production score, NFL.com's production score for Mason Graham was 93 out of 100. The guy plays football. His athleticism grade was 85, which means he's probably athletically run-of-the-mill kind of defensive lineman, maybe upper third defensive lineman athletically. The question is, what separates a kind of upper third athletic player, gives him a 93 grade on production, and that is technique, understanding football, knowing what's happening on the field, understanding, having football awareness, football IQ, everything you want in a player. The NFL.com says that is what separates him from other defensive tackles. Going back to my theme, draft people that can play football. All right, so it gets interesting when you get to PFF. Pro Football Focus listed him as one of the best defensive tackle prospects they've had in the last 5 years. They correctly ascertained that the Browns need a defensive tackle to solve their defensive tackle issue. That defense isn't going to go anywhere as long as you can let Najee Harris and Lamar Jackson and that whole crew run the football up the middle. And now we're getting to another discussion we're going to have later about running the football. Pat McAfee. Now, the Pat McAfee show and their analysis of the Browns pick was interesting. Peter Schrager comes out and says he's not tall, he's not big, he might fall out of the top 10. There's rumors he would fall out of the top 10 because of his lack of athleticism, lack of elite athleticism, we put it that way. He says, end quote, and then you watch the tape and all this guy does is destroy things. And that is absolutely correct. Peter Schrager is absolutely right. You watch him, he is completely disrupting whatever the offensive line is attempting to do. This guy is a nightmare. I'll tell you personally, if I were playing football, I was a technique guy. I played left guard. I played defensive end, right? I played offensive line in college. I was a technique guy. I wasn't the most athletic guy, but I understood football. I understood how to play football. And this is probably why I'm preference to guys who can understand how to play football. That's who I was. Mason Graham is that technique guy. He's that guy that can do that. So if I were to have to line up over Mason Graham, I would be concerned because I would have to reach way back down into my bag of tricks to find whatever technique I can to stop this guy, because I'm not going to go out and just bully him. I'm going to have to, because he's going to technique me all over the place. I'm going to have to learn how to counter his technique, counter his counters. It's going to be a chess match on that defensive line. And at this point, Mason Graham's the king of chess. Now, there was one analyst on the Pat McAfee show that said, and I quote, I didn't get this guy's name and I couldn't figure it out, so maybe somebody can help me out in the comments. The analyst said, and I quote, I question if the Browns know what the elf they're doing. He's questioning if the Browns know what they're doing in drafting the guy Mason Graham when you could have drafted Abdul Carter, which I'm not a fan of, which you could have drafted Travis Hunter. I mean, okay, you need weapons, right? You could have drafted Will Campbell, who was there. The thing I had issues with was you could have drafted Ashton Jeanty, which I would like to have seen Ashton Jeanty. So he's questioning, and he's saying what the elf is going on, that the Browns don't know what the heck they're doing. So let's just for giggles, why don't we take that question up? What are the Browns doing? Because you now have people saying the Browns have no idea what they're doing. This is a complete crap show, and oh my God, this is some of the dumbest stuff we've ever seen. They've traded away from this generational talent, which, by the way, the Browns hyped this guy to no end. There is no way Travis Hunter is the Shohei Ohtani of football. That's ridiculous. But they hyped him up and they traded him off, and now the Browns are stupid for doing that. And now they're drafting a defensive tackle. This has got to be one of the dumbest things ever. And a lot of fans feel this way. So I want to throw a different perspective on this so that you can kind of get as jacked as I am about this pick in particular. I'm super excited about this pick and the draft as it moves forward. What to look for, what have the Browns revealed in what they're doing? So first of all, they hyped up Travis Hunter and then sold him off to the highest bidder. That's how the draft started for the Browns. So that told us right away that the Browns are not interested in taking elite players, that they're looking to grab picks and pick the most good players they can to start refurbishing this team, or the dreaded rebuild. So the Browns have signaled already we're in rebuild mode. We are not in build or not in win now mode, rebuild mode. Win now mode is you sit there and take Travis Hunter, and then in pick 33 you take a quarterback and then try to go out there and win the Super Bowl. And that's not what the Browns are doing. The Browns are saying, hey, we have been devastated by this Deshaun Watson trade, and we now need to rebuild our team and rebuild the infrastructure. And so they trade this off. The Browns in this trade, by the way, get pick five, correct? They get pick 36, which is the fourth pick in the second round. They get pick 126, which I believe is the sixth round. And they get, and this is the important thing, a first round pick in 2026. So before they make a pick, they've already traded this pick to get a first round pick in next year's draft, which signals they're going quarterback next year in the first round. And they're building assets to use to pay for that quarterback. Okay? Because if you're going to have to move up to the top 5 to get a quarterback, you're going to have to pay for that. And that's usually 3 first-round picks. If you can throw 2 at it from the get-go, then you only have to give up a 1 and 27, and that's not going to hurt you like the Deshaun Watson trade hurt you. Now, what did the Jaguars get from the Browns? They got the second overall pick. They got pick 104, which I believe is a 5, and pick 200, which I believe is a 6. So the Jaguars didn't get much from they got the number 2 pick from the Browns. That's what they paid for, primarily with that 2026 first round pick. That's the key. That's the linchpin to this draft trade. Okay, so then the Browns went and picked the best defensive tackle in a draft loaded with defensive tackles. They might even take another defensive tackle. To be honest with you, I hope they do. I mean, I hope they just throw assets at that defensive tackle room and shore that thing up once and for all. So what does all this mean? Let's get into the philosophical question. You've traded your pick, right? So the Browns are rebuilding. Like I said, they have been depleted from the Deshaun Watson trade, and they are now looking to rebuild the team. That first round pick in next year's draft is going to allow them to pick a quarterback, which means for people like me who really like Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sanders' son, and really wanted them to pick him at 2, they're not drafting Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders is a win now quarterback. Okay. He may be a win now quarterback with some problems you got to fix, but Shedeur Sanders is a guy that you think if I can plug him into this offense, we can get this offense rolling. And I don't think that's what the Browns are doing at all. Right? They took a defensive tackle to solve a defensive tackle issue, which seems like an enigmatic thing to do, but we'll get to that in a second. They're not. They're gonna fix this team. They're gonna find all the things that they need to build this team up from the foundation up, and that's what they're doing. And they started that off with a defensive interior. Coming into today, they've got pick 33 and 36. That's 2 picks at the top of the second round. They've also got 2 picks at the top of the third. Actually, they got the top one of the top picks of the third round, and I believe a compensatory at the end of the third. I believe. Don't quote me. Didn't look that up because I didn't think it was important. But they got 4 picks today heading into the draft, heading in there, and that will give them 5 in the top 100, which is a lot, especially when you're only supposed to have 7 in the draft, right? So they're getting a lot, and they're going to just take the best player available, and they're going to just sit there and like build the team. But before we get into that, let's just go there. Let's transition to what are the Browns going to do today? What the elf are we doing today? Now, if you're in the mindset that the Browns are close to winning and we're just going to grab a quarterback and a running back and we're off and running, what the Browns are about to do, I don't think is going to make sense. I can't imagine that's going to be the strategy. Okay, but I'll get to it in a second. If it is, there's a way to make that happen. So if the Browns are really taking the best player available, then the top 5, according to Daniel Jeremiah, heading into today are Nick Emmett. I'm terrible with these names. Nick Emenwara, safety from South Carolina. Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan, who did not run the 40, and people think that he's slow, which is why he's falling. Shedeur Sanders is 3, quarterback out of Colorado, which people like me think would be a great pick. Mike Green, edge from Marshall, although he's got some sexual harassment stuff out there, I believe. I vaguely saw that. But he's a linebacker. He's an off-ball linebacker. Maybe the Browns want an off-ball linebacker. And then you got Mason Taylor at a tight end out of LSU, who's probably the best technically sound tight end in the NFL draft. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of these 2 next picks isn't Mason Taylor. If I had to put money on it, that's the money I'm putting down. I don't know. But if they're building in the draft, if they've decided, okay, we're punting this quarterback thing until the next draft, then I wouldn't be surprised if they don't take positions that they need, meaning safety. There's one on the board in top 5. Edge. There's one on the board in the top 5. Tight end. There's one on the board in the top 5. And they always take corners, and there's a corner in the top 5. So you could walk out of here, the Browns could walk out of here with the equivalent of 3 first-round pick level talent with the next 2 picks they get. So, right? So you're going with Mason Graham. You may get his teammate, Will Johnson. I don't know what they're going to do with that if that happens. You could walk out of there with Mason Taylor. You could walk out of there with Mike Green. I don't know if they're going to grab Mike Green just for the off-field concerns. All right, so if they're just building, right, that's the team you're looking at. Those players you're looking at. It could be that they want to rebuild with a purpose. Like they have a plan in mind of what they want this team to look like. If that's the case, I think they would go running back. And running backs on the board are Travion Henderson and Caleb Johnson are your top 2 second-round grades on those players. They could also be looking at, I have balloons going. I have no idea what that is. Second, they could be looking at a quarterback. That quarterback could be Shedeur Sanders or it could be Jalen Milroe. Those are the 2 names that the Browns have been linked to. Not a fan of Milroe. I think Shedeur Sanders would be the best guy that you could get out there. Wide receivers, Luther Burden the third, good wide receiver out there that the Browns could pick up, help out on the offensive side of the ball. But here's what I want to. Here's the rub of the whole show. You ready? Here comes the grand finale. No Ravens hate today. I'm sorry. I am kind of miffed they didn't take a kicker, but no Ravens hate. Here's the pick. Here's the end game. Here's the thing that's changed about the NFL. Right now, the the pendulum has swung toward the NFL being a pass-first league. Okay? That all the rules are for passing, all the rules favor passing. Just look at the Cincinnati Bengals. They just paid receivers, they paid their quarterback at the expense of their defense. Okay? And they're just going to go out and throw the ball all over the yard. That's what the NFL is right now. But every time the pendulum swings to one side, what happens? It swings back and things start to a state of equilibrium gets met. So now that everybody has gone out and started throwing the ball, defenses have done what? They've loaded up on corners, which the Browns do a lot. They have they've drafted fast linebackers that can cover, all to the point where you're trying to stop the passing game. Well, if you're an offensive coordinator and you're coming out here and they've got small linebackers, small defensive backs, because they're trying to, stop the pass, although they like to get these long and tall defensive backs. They're not real small people anymore. But if you have a smaller defense and you have a defensive line that's designed to pass the rusher, what's the best thing to do? Run the football, right? And who runs the football? The Ravens, the Steelers. Okay, they run the football. The Bengals throw it all over the yard. If you can't stop the run in this division, you're not winning football games. That's why Mason Graham makes sense. The Browns have been weak up the middle. They get run on up the middle. If you got to stop that if you're going to win football games, Mason Graham is by far the best run-stopping defensive tackle in this draft. There is him and there is everyone else. Mason Graham is that freaking good. So the Browns understand maybe that there's this shift going on in the NFL, that either in the AFC North or the NFL as a whole. To further illustrate this, let me say this. Last year, 2023, there were 0 running backs who had over 250 carries in the NFL. None. Everyone's throwing the ball. Last year, there were 6 running backs that had over 300 carries. The running back position is back, ladies and gentlemen. Running the football is the countercultural move in the NFL that's starting to gain ascendancy. The Philadelphia Eagles ran the football. They had the best running back in the NFL. They built their team on running the football. The Browns might be trying to take advantage of that because the Browns traditionally have been a running football team. So if you think we're going to rebuild this offense, it's not going to be around maybe the Travis Hunters or the Shedeur Sanders that can throw the football. You might be looking for people who can run the football. You might be looking at Travion Henderson at 33 or 36. That'd be a tremendous pick. You may be looking at Mason Taylor as a tight end that you would probably need to teach how to block, although he tries. I got to give him that, right? Maybe they're looking to run the football. This is why someone like Jalen Milroe would make sense in the 3rd round. I mean, obviously he can't throw the football, but he can run. If you can fix his mechanics, you've got a running quarterback. Now all of a sudden you've got a dynamic running back. You've got a dynamic quarterback that can run the football in a league where most defenses are designed to stop the pass. You're out there just running over people. And then that's going to open up the passing game, particularly if they start to draft bigger, heavier, more thumper type of linebackers, bigger, heavier defensive linemen designed to stop the run and not necessarily rush the passer. You can gain some strength there. You can gain some advantage in running the football. The Ravens have been doing it for a while. The Steelers just pound Najee Harris all the time up the middle. Everybody basically just pounds the ball up the middle. And the Browns, they've been doing it for 4 or 5 years, and it's frustrating. So Mason Graham's going to address that. Going to stop the run. Okay? The new trend in the NFL is to run. Teams are going to run. The Browns just drafted the best run stopper. Now at the beginning of the 2nd round, they are poised to start their rushing attack. Tight ends, running backs, a quarterback that can run the football, that can make basic throws if you need him to, right? If nothing else, you're coming in 2026, you're taking a quarterback with your 2 first-round picks, possibly trading up for a quarterback, right? Then you've got Jalen Milroe as a gadget player that can come in on 4th down and do a tush push or run a read option and can run at a 4.4 pace. and run all over the field with twitchiness like Lamar Jackson. Then you bring your pocket passer back in. So I think the Browns have a good plan and a good strategy if it's a long-term build designed to create a running offense that can pass off play action, and the newest trend in the NFL being to start to run the football. Now you're loading up on defensive linemen that can run the football or stop the run. You just got the best one in the draft. You could possibly get another good one in the third round. I think the Browns are going to have a good draft. But if you're expecting them to come out and draft Shedeur Sanders and a wide receiver and throw the ball all over the yard, you might be disappointed. But if you're like, hey, we're going to build the foundation, get us some people that can stop the run, get us some people that can run the football, and then throw off a play action, this is going to be, in my opinion, a tremendous draft. It just depends on how you look at it. It just depends if you're going to sit there and be like, what the elf was that?
Thank you for listening to the What the Elf Was That podcast. Please like, subscribe, and tell all your friends to give a listen. You can follow host Joel Cade on Twitter at The Left Guard.
Yeah, follow me on X. Mark the spot.